Elections review. Go through, so we're going to just start with some numbers, going back to 2018, and then we're going to focus on the absentee ballot voting, which is usually the more hot topic. A couple of items with that, and then we're going to look ahead to 2026 and 2028. We're going to do a quick summary of Kendra's position as election administrator. Then she's actually going to run through a few past election topics, just reminding the board of where we're at with those. Make sure we're still on the same page. I'm pushing my magic button and it's not Tanner. Help me. There we go. Okay, so a couple things on this one. This is for the general election, the stats, going back to 2018. Just highlight a couple things. One is our voter turnout. You can see the 95% number back in 2020, 91% for 2024. Carver County's been one of the highest voter turnout historically for a while. We think that represents a lot of trust in the system. You can see that the election day voters equals the election day ballots, 69,565 for the latest one in November. But you can see within the absentee ballots, pretty significant shift. Point out the 4,333 number in bold. That's the last presidential election. That's how many absentee ballots are placed in the tabulators by the voters. That over tripled to 15,351 in our last election. And then the two asterisks point out that the legislature changed the absentee voting, we call it direct voting, where they still the absentee process, but voters can put their ballot directly into the tabulator just like they do on election day. That increased from 7 days to 18 days before election, which obviously meant a lot more people were able to put their ballots directly into the tabulators, which meant correspondingly, you can see back in 2020, last presidential election, the 30,000 were absentee ballots that were placed in the tabulator by the absentee ballot board. That was a lot to do with COVID. A lot of people were, mailed theirs in. They didn't want to come into the building. So the absentee ballot board, over 45% of the ballots that were cast were put in by the absentee ballot board into the high-speed tabulator. That number dropped significantly down to 13,000 in 2024, which represents still mainly the mail, right? Those are the people that are mailing in their ballots, and then the people that were did the absentee ballot prior to the 18 days, because once the 18 days before the election, then they were placing their absentee ballots directly into the tabulator. So any questions on the numbers? In terms of the absentee ballot board, just a high-level overview. They operate for 46 days before election. And last year we had 3 elections: the presidential primary, the regular primary, as well as the general primary or general election. So 46 days before each one of those 3 elections, the absentee ballot board was open and open for business. We break it into 3 phases. Phase 1 is where you're verifying the applications. And then they also do the initial exception rejection when they come back. Phase 2 is when you open the envelopes and you make a tally. You count the number of absentee ballots. You also verify once again, so it's like a 2-step process to verify. And then phase 3 is when you were entering those absentee ballots into the high-speed tabulator. So in the Minnesota statute allows on the absentee ballot board that you can have election judges who are representing the voters affiliated with major political parties, or deputized county auditors who are representing all the voters, major, minor parties, independents. Interestingly, the statutes are not clear how you select those absentee ballot board election judges for the absentee ballot. It's very clear on election day for cities and townships, but for the absentee ballot board, it's not real clear. Then there's 2 lawsuits. Just that the
absentee ballot board statements.
that the absentee ballot board is, and this is being taped, so The meetings now are being taped. But as I wrote there, the statutes aren't clear, the process to select absentee ballot board members, election judges for the absentee ballot board. We good?
Ms. Ray, let's let him finish, and I know that's a big one for,
I just want to make sure I heard what I heard.
okay?
Yeah, okay. And then in March of 2022, the Supreme Court, there's a lawsuit, and they ruled that absentee ballot board, they must use election judges for significant but infrequent tasks. So signature verification, ballot duplication, those are the two most often referred to. But even then, the ruling still wasn't clear, at least in our opinion, the ruling still wasn't clear, the process to select the absentee ballot board election judges. In July of 2022, the Carver County Board updated their absentee ballot board resolution. And in that resolution, they directed county staff to use election judges from the major party list for signature verification and ballot duplication. So we've been following that board direction since 2022. And just there's some numbers that the signature verification for in 2022 election and 2024 election, there was less than 40. So it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, the signature verification, that step has to be done by election judges from the major party list. And then ballot duplication, there was 424 out of the 69,000 that I just mentioned. There's 425 that needed to be, less than 425 that had to be, the ballots had to be duplicated. So, some coffee got spilled on it, or there's a tear in it, something that doesn't allow it to go through the high-speed tabulator, that ballot has to be duplicated. So that happened 425 times. And most of those were actually UOCAVA, which are the military ballots. We send them out to our military serving overseas, and when they get a PDF, and when they come back, they actually have to be, they have to have a ballot duplicated, actually create a ballot. So most of those are things that there's nothing that could happen. Nobody did anything wrong. It's just built into the system that those need to be, those ballots need to be duplicated. As I said, that has, in Carver County, we've been using the election judges from the major party list since 2022, because that's what the board's direction was. April 2024, we had a workshop, and about a year ago, and the direction from the board was to increase the utilization of election judges from the major party list. So we committed to having them in the room whenever we did phase 2 or phase 3 for the 2024 election. Worked well. And then we actually put them to work, as long as we were there to do the signature verification or the ballot duplication. She had them working as the phase 2 team, so it worked out great as well. So we did increase the utilization of those election judges for 2024. Most of us remember in October 2024, there was a lawsuit against Hennepin County, and they were not using election judges from the party list. As I mentioned, the statutes weren't clear, the Supreme Court ruling wasn't clear, so we had the lawsuit. Came out of that lawsuit, it was very clear, specifically stated that election judges had to be selected from the major party list, or exhausted from the major party list, which Hennepin County was not following. But as I said, we've been following that since July 2022, so it had no impact, right? We were not impacted by the lawsuit because of the July 2022 county board resolution. Any questions? I'm going to raise three elections issues, concerns from 2024. Kind of something, lessons learned, things we hope to do better on. But the first one was that election staff worked 10 to 12 hours a day for 19 straight days. This is multiple election staff, including Kendra, including some of our temporary people. The legislature added absentee ballot board. They had to be open on Tuesday night, which we didn't have before. They added another Saturday, and they added a Sunday, which for me, I thought, why would they do that on Sunday? Who would want to vote on Sunday? It was crowded. It was very popular, people coming in on Sunday. And they also added those 18 days direct voting, which to me sounded good because it meant the absentee ballot board was going to be doing less of phase 2 and phase 3 where they had to put them in the tabulator. But it does create more work after the polls close for Kendra and her staff. So the polls were open, and then once they closed, they still had more work to do because of how the direct voting works. And all that meant was they lost opportunities to work and get the other work done that needed to get done because they were doing these extra hours that were required by the statute. The same thing happened in 2022. Similar long hours, multiple staff, happened for different reasons, but it's a real concern because of the long number of days and with no days off. Obviously, it adds work-life balance stress to an already stressful job, increases errors, increases opportunities for mistakes. There's no margin for no safety margin. All of a sudden, something did happen. Somebody gets sick, or the legislature throws a last-minute curveball at us, like the Supreme Court ruling that could have affected us. It didn't, but those are things that are out there, and we already got staff working that many days. That's going to be a real challenge to address those changes. It's also very difficult to train, develop staff when everyone's working so many hours and they're trying to get so much done. It's been on our mind, but we haven't been. There's no simple solutions. One goal that we have would be to decrease the number of in-person absentee voters. If Chanhassen would be a absentee voting location, similar to what Waconia is doing, that would decrease our volume that was here at the government center by a third, which would be awesome. We're also our plan is going to get more experienced election judges from major party lists, just like we've been doing. It's good to have them there. They have to be doing ballot duplication and signature verification. So if they're already there for doing that, let's get more of them in there and do more work. And then we keep talking about other things as well.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question on that.
Yeah, yes, Mr. MD.
So if Chanhassen was kind enough to jump in this game, would they be required to be open Tuesday nights and Saturday, Sundays?
The way the statute's written now, they would. Kendra's telling me that they are talking about changing, so they wouldn't have. They actually have to be open for the 46 days, and then including the other Tuesday nights and the Saturday, Sundays. But they are talking about changing that, so you only got to be open for the 18 days direct. But yeah, that is the law's not very flexible. It's if you're going to provide that, you got to provide you got to be open the whole time. And it's statewide then, everyone's got the same hours, everyone's got the same, so there's consistency, which is, I believe, why they do it, but it does create an extra burden.
Good to know. Thank you.
Our second issue was that our first precinct to report wasn't until 1 a.m. in the morning. At that time, we had 34 out of the 38 precincts that were reported, and that was later than what we had hoped. This time, it was a little different this year than it was 2 years ago. This was focused on, the late reporting was on completing phase 2. And that had a lot to do with before Election Day, we had limited space for those phase 2 teams. And we also had made the commitment to have election judges from the party list in the room at all times for phase 2 and phase 3. So that complicated the scheduling logistics for Kendra, because she had to make sure we had election judges from the party list in the room when we're doing those things. So just another wrinkle. So on Election Day, we weren't totally caught up on all the absentee ballots that we had received in terms of getting them into phase 2 and phase 3. And then on Election Day, the legislature changed the drop-off point or the deadline. It was 3 p.m. They changed it to 8 p.m. And what ended up happening is we got a large drop-off from the post office in the morning, which we've gotten before, and we've gotten through those on Election Day. But then we also got one in the evening, a large drop, which we just weren't expecting. We didn't think it'd be a large drop. We thought a few more would trickle in, but it was a pretty big number. And then we had the election judge not in the room. That became a problem when the one election judge, so it's major party balance, one of them was called into their township precinct to help close because they're going to be the head judge next year. So they wanted to train him in. It was kind of unexpected. All of a sudden they realized, we won't need. So that person had to leave, which meant we stopped phase 2 and phase 3 from 7:30 to 9:30, right in the key part of the day. Stopped both phase 2 and phase 3 to allow that person to leave. And then once he came back, then we started things up again. So that delay was just due to we only had the 2, one from each party. Obviously, next time we're going to have 4, 2 from each party. So if one does happen to leave, we're not going to stop everything. But those are the main reasons why it took us longer to get the phase, to get our first precinct to report. As I mentioned, we had this similar problem in 2022, but that was actually, phase 2 wasn't the problem, phase 3 was the problem. But we put Mary Kay, Assistant Finance Director, and Lynn Boris from our finance staff, we put them on phase 3 this year, and they were caught up, and they did a good job in that. So it was really, it's kind of a moving target, but that was that was explanation for why we were late in getting our first precincts to report. For 2026, we expect the absentee ballot volume to increase. It's becoming more and more popular, so we're anticipating more. And the big change we're going to make is that we figure out how to get more space. We figure out how to create more space for our phase 2 teams, which should help keep us caught up on the volume. And then the third election concern I want to bring up is our software our vendor, ES&S, they had a programming error where I mentioned the 34 out of 38 were that's when we did our first precinct to that report. The 4 that weren't ready because they had an excess ballot issue, they actually got reported as being 100% reported, even though they did not have their polling place results in. So it's not supposed to happen that way. The ES&S writes their software so that you can only report when you've got both the absentee ballots and the polling place ballots. But they made an error in their program that allowed us to report those, just the absentee ballot numbers for those 4 precincts without the polling place numbers in yet. And it looked to the state that we had 100% of our precincts reported, 38 out of 38, when we only had given them numbers for 34. So we didn't have the opportunity to pre-test that. That wasn't something that we had any idea that it was there. It's always been programmed to work correctly. It's kind of a stopgap that won't allow it. It actually turned out to be we were lucky that we reported as late as we did, because the problem was there. If we would have reported at 10 at night or 11 at night and had all of our precincts would have looked like they 100% had been reported or had been reported when we could have only maybe had half or a third or whatever. So it was actually lucky that we were late, because otherwise this problem would have been bigger. The vendor's already committed to. They explained it to the state. They've explained it to Kendra. Obviously, they're going to double check their programming before they send it to us, that they did this right, and they're going to create the ability that we can pre-test that particular reporting functionality. So we'll test to see if we can report precincts when we don't have both the absentee ballots and the polling place ballots. So we'll be able to check that. So we don't anticipate that being a problem. It's just a good example of how you think you got it figured out. Kendra's been doing this with ESS for a long time. They do this across the country, and this was an error that was made in their programming. They didn't catch it. We had no way of catching it, but we'll get it figured out for next time.
Dave, can you make one? This did not just impact Carver County.
Yeah.
It was not unique to Carver County. There were multiple counties that were affected by this same situation. So just to clarify.
Thanks, Kendra. Okay, looking ahead to 2026, as I mentioned, we are planning on expanding our absentee ballot space. We're also it's going to allow us to create a public viewing for phases 2 and 3. We had in Township Hall, where we're currently located, there's two spaces that are adjacent. IT had one of them, and Public Health had another. We looked at IT because we could possibly have used their space, but it didn't work out as well. But IT has now cleared out their space. Public Health has agreed to move into IT space, which means we'll have there's a wall that's between us. They didn't used to be there. And once that wall is taken down, we'll have this whole big hallway. We'll be able to put in more tables and chairs for our phase 2 teams, which is going to be great. And it's also going to allow us to have a public viewing. So that's allowed by statute. It's not required to have the public be able to view. We just didn't have the space to be able to make it work up until this point. But we think once we take that wall down, it'll be a real good spot for the public to view. But more importantly for us, at least, we'll be able to have more phase 2 teams. So we'll be able to get through those numbers even quicker, especially as the numbers grow. And then, as I mentioned, hopefully we're trying to increase our absentee voting locations. The county's required to have a voting location for all 38 precincts. So anybody in the county any voter in the county can come, and they can we have all of the ballots here at the county. The beauty of being a city absentee voting location is like what Coney is doing. They only have to have the ballots for their precinct. So if you have 3 precincts, that's all you have. You don't have to have the 38. So it's actually a much more efficient process for the voters because they're only, the election judges and the workers are only having to do with those ballots for their precincts. And obviously it's more convenient, right? It's not, you're not driving a long distance to get to vote. In most metro cities in the area do provide the absentee voting locations. In Scott County, we looked, they have 7 city absentee voting locations. In Carver County, we only have the 1. We've had just the 1 since 2018. Chanhassen has shown some interest in the past. Victoria's shown some interest, but haven't been able to get them over the hump. But you can see it have a huge impact on the number of in-person absentee voters that come to the government center. You can see Chanhassen at over 5,000, Chaska 6,000. When we talked to them, they weren't as interested at the time because we're already doing it in Chanhassen, so the convenience factor is not there.
In Chaska.
Chaska, excuse me, yeah, Chaska. But you can see the numbers are growing. Even Carver and Victoria now are increasing. Interesting, Laconia, we only had 84 people come to the government center because they can go to City Hall and take care of theirs. And they had a large number of people that went to Laconia for their absentee ballot, in-person absentee ballot voting. Then for 2028, the legislature has allowed, or and Kendra, I think talked about this too, but they've changed the law so that the absentee voting locations will transition to early voting precincts. And the difference is there's no absentee ballot application process when we go to early voting precincts. It's going to be just like election day, where it's going to be run by election judges from the party list. Challengers will be allowed. Anything that's similar to what happens on election day will be what is going to be these early voting precincts. They might. I thought it was going to be 2028. Kendra now tells me they're actually talking about being a pilot project in 2026 in some areas that test their software and before they roll it out in statewide in 2028. So we'll see. We'll follow that to see how that goes. Then also in 2028, the big change would be obviously the government center building construction schedule. If we stay on pace for that, 2028, we may not have a government center building here to have our either our early voting precinct or the absentee voting location. So we're talking about moving the requirement that the county has to provide this across the whole county, potentially moving out to Cologne, Waconia area. And then because we'd be out there, we think then maybe we could talk to the city of Chaska into being an early voting precinct at their community center. And then also big picture, talking about not having the county government center be the early voting precinct, where we're bringing everyone in from the county at our government center. Perhaps if we find a good spot out in Cologne or Waconia, we could just leave it out there. And then the people that are coming in aren't driving all the way into Chaska. And we don't have the volume, right? We can offload it by Chaska doing their own, Chan doing their own, Victoria doing their own, Carver doing their own, Waconia doing their own. So it's kind of big picture. Just give the board a heads up on kind of where we might be going with that.
Could I
Yep.
add a clarification question, Mr. Chair? So, but if our staff have to move because of construction, we're going to have to find lease space, probably in Cascacan. So
Well-
could we provide the service there?
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's what Plan A was. That's what we've been thinking all along, that we would, wherever our staff goes temporarily, we would just provide the same level of services there. Just lately, we just started thinking, well, rather than trying to, because if we got 15,000 people that are going to be coming through there, that only certain spaces are going to work well for that. Then we thought, well, what if we actually move it out to the Public Works facility as an example, and we do it there. Then Chaska it became a voting location at the community center. Then we wouldn't be bringing a lot of people out there. We could dramatically, if you go back to that list, all these big ones, right, would all not be coming to wherever we put this up. It'd just be these small ones, 67, 57, 150. So it could dramatically change what we're having to deal with if we move this required location out. Actually, I got Scott County, that's what Scott County does. They have their county-wide facility somewhere out in the middle, and then they have their big cities just to their locations. Hennepin County does it that way. Anoka County does it that way too. So it's just something came up that we started thinking about. But when you start thinking about that new building, if we didn't have to build something to accommodate 15,000 voters coming through, that would obviously make a big change in our building. So that was the main driver to start thinking about that. Which Kendra's not necessarily on board with yet. So just, yeah.
To manage them in separate locations
Yeah.
might be a challenge.
Yeah, so it's just preliminary thinking, but something to put on everyone's radar. Well, real quick, I just want to shift a little bit to the elections administrator position. And I just want to share with the board and make sure to acknowledge Kendra. I tend to do I deal with the data requests, and I deal with the questions from the board, and I deal with questions from the community. But, obviously Kendra's is the main person that's doing all the work and coordinating everything. And it's a tough position. There's the statutory compliance with the legislature making changes, the Supreme Court rulings, like what happened this year with Hennepin County, county attorney interpretations. The election day precincts don't apply to absentee voting locations. We had poll challengers in 2024, which is something that is allowed for an election day, but it's clearly not allowed for in an absentee voting location. But we still haven't showed up, and we had to get the attorneys involved and kind of explain the statute, well, and the Secretary of State as well, and explain the statutes to them. And a lot of stress involved with trying to everyone's trying to follow the laws, but you have different interpretations and you look at it differently. But yeah, it's not easy. The election data requests, thankfully, we're down in 2024 compared to 2022. I mean, I said I manage them. I deal with them, but I don't know all the answers, so I'm still relying on Kendra. Hey, help me out with this one, and so I'm still, asking her a lot of questions. But the volume was down in 2024 a little bit, so that was good. There is a new AMCO Legislative Implementation Committee, and Kendra's going to be on that, going to represent Carver County on that committee. So that, just a kind of an acknowledgement of Kendra's knowledge and expertise. In terms of the 28,000 total absentee ballots, those are both the in-person and the mail. And she has 3 full-time staff. We had 19 temporary people, deputized county auditors, and then the 5 election judges from the major party list. The key to making our elections work are the partnerships with the cities and townships. The county provides the equipment, election equipment, supplies, and support for the 37 precincts. And then provides training. Kendra is required to provide the training for 450 election judges and clerks. It's the state's materials, but county's got to provide that election judge training. And then we keep track to make sure people have actually attended the training. And it is, the unfortunate thing is that the high turnover, this stressful position, we're seeing it in Minnesota and across the country, that there's election administration, they're just, they don't want to do it anymore. They get burned out. It's too much. Thankfully, Kendra's still here. Her staff's still here. Her temporary people, Pam Razor and Sheriff Olson, and a number of them, they keep coming back. They say it's kind of in their blood. So it's great to have them back. And Kendra does a great job leading the team, working with all the cities and the townships, and keeping it all, fair and accurate process. So at this point, I'll bring Kendra up. She's going to say a few words. She's going to finish up the presentation. Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and board members and the public. Thank you for that. We'll just talk about a few past election topics that we've had. And just to summarize the different roles and responsibilities for election administration, and to remind everyone, those roles and responsibilities are driven by statutory language. So those roles and involvement are defined in statute. The state adopts the statutes and rules and procedures. It determines what type of machines can be certified and can be used in Minnesota, what the absentee processes are, what ID requirements do or don't exist in our election processes, and how we do the post-election counts, the post-election review to validate the accuracy of the results on election night. So that's all driven by our state statutes. Voters' concerns about that, election integrity, transparency. That is the message when we get questions at our office, or we direct the election judges, that if people have concerns, their audience is the legislature. We actually have a contact sheet that we hand out to help them with that outreach, so that they can have those conversations with the right people. The county responsibility and the county board appointing the election administrator, and then approving our budget for what we need for election staff, space, equipment. And then also then just hearing those concerns and making sure that questions are directed to either staff, the county attorney, the appropriate audience for the public concerns. Cities and townships, it's more driven around the election day voting, the polling place. They clearly have the statute that talks about staffing election judges, the exhaustion of those election judge lists that are received from the parties. We pass that on to the cities and townships, and then discuss the compliance with the election day statutes of exhausting the list. And then they use their attorneys and they hire the election judges. So as Dave mentioned, we train over 450 election judges every election cycle, but those election judges are hired and are the staff of the cities and townships themselves. So just the last point here, again, as I mentioned, that the roles and responsibilities are driven by statutory language. And so the statute provides that when the party lists submit those election judge lists, the parties submit those lists to the state then precincts those and identifies what counties to send those lists to, and then statutes provides that we send that list on to the cities and townships. There is no other role or responsibility or involvement at the county level that's defined in statute after that point. And then the major political party responsibility is providing those lists of people interested in being election judges. And as Dave mentioned, those relationships, those of you that have been around for a while have heard me say this before, but I'll say it again. When we have a successful election in Carver County, it's not a Carver County election office success, it's a Carver County success. We view that as a partnership of us, the cities and the townships, the election judges, and quite honestly, the voters themselves, that we're all working together to have a successful, accurate election in Carver County. So it is truly a partnership from our perspective. Some of the past election topics that have been discussed and analyzed and that in the past in Carver County is hand counts. We do have a hand count verification after every election. It's driven by statute that there be a post-election review. So at the county canvass board meeting for the general election, they draw 3 random precincts from the 38 precincts in Carver County. We conduct and oversee the post-election hand count after the election, but it is actually done by teams of party-balanced election judges from the cities and townships that are selected. So again, we lead that process, but the hand count itself is done by the party-balanced teams of election judges. We have had some recounts in the past. All of us that were around at the time remember the 2008 Coleman-Franken Senate race recount. That was a statutorily required recount and court contest. We have had a couple of discretionary recounts in past elections in Carver County. There's a statutory threshold of how close the race is, for lack of a better term of putting it. If it falls within a certain range, it's a taxpayer-funded required recount. If it falls outside of the range, a losing candidate does have the right to request a discretionary recount where they pay for that recount. And they get to pick which precincts they want us to start with. So we have had a couple of those in recent years. The 2018 election had the state representative, District 47B, and in 2024, we did have a discretionary recount requested for state representative 48B. Both of those showed that all of these things, the required post-election review and the recounts that have happened in past elections have validated the 100% accuracy of the machine counts in Carver County. Also, with the concerns about the absentee voting security, to go through the process, we do have the requirement of the application. Again, the direct balloting that we're doing currently requires that anybody that votes absentee fill out an application and submit it. It has to provide certain identifying information, their driver's license, the last four of their social security, date of birth, everything that identifies that unique individual and where they live. And then the absentee ballot board members verify that data in the state database. We create a uniquely identifiable absentee record for that voter before the ballot is released. And that's whether it's through the mail or handing to an in-person voter. We verify that information. We create that uniquely identifiable absentee record in the state system before a ballot is issued. Then when the absentee is returned in the envelope, again, with the couple of possibilities that Dave mentioned, that absentee ballot board then, there's identifying information they're required to put on the envelope. Again, that social security number, last four of the social, their date of birth, has to have the voter. There's legal elements that have to be on that envelope before they can accept that absentee ballot to be included in our results. And they match that information to the unique absentee record that's in the system. The voter is signing on the envelope that they acknowledge that any fraud is a felony. There's the witness requirement in Minnesota as well. And the ballot is always linked to that voter record. So if we would receive something back, I know there's speculation of whether somebody could just return a ballot. There's a unique barcode. So if the ballot board gets anything that doesn't match something that was issued for our office, that ballot is not going to be accepted. And certainly there would be additional investigation and possible submission to the sheriff's department and consulting the county attorney to possibly prosecute. And there is protections from the voter voting twice. That's whether somebody can vote absentee twice or vote absentee and then show up at their polling place. That unique absentee record, that database keeps that from happening. We actually had people a number of times, and I was in vicinity when we had those conversations with them, where they asked us to mail their ballot. We mailed the ballot to them, and then they showed up in person at our counter to vote in person. And the first thing they heard from us was, well, we show that we sent you a ballot. Did you receive that? Oh, gosh, yes, I did. We have to spoil and inactivate all of those materials that were mailed to them before we can issue them a new ballot. Same thing for the voter in the polling place. The record is going to show when they go to show up at the polling place, if they had an absentee ballot accepted, it's going to show that they can't vote on election day. So those protections are in place to really minimize the chance of somebody voting twice. And then the absentee drop box versus the absentee drop slot. There's been some movement in past elections as far as the statutes allowing for the use of either of these options. The decision from the board and the direction was to use the absentee drop slot. That comes directly into a safe in our office. It comes directly into the office, and it's only open during our hours when we are there to staff it and watch it. It does allow somebody returning their own ballot to just drop it in the slot and not have to stand in line. And it also takes, if they have concerns about the timing of the post office and those other concerns, they can make sure that they get it right directly into our possession. And there is surveillance in that window and such. And then there's also the option in statute of an absentee ballot drop box, which would be a 24/7 option external to the building that has a lot of requirements as far as surveillance and those types of security controls. The direction in the past, the recommendation from us, and just from a couple of elements, there have been some counties that have implemented, and there's been movement of implementing and then choosing not to use it anymore, consistent with what's going on in other metro counties and what we're hearing as far as voter support and demand of that. We've We've not used, or the direction has not been to not use the drop box, and our expectation is that we would continue to, with that recommendation at this point. And then another topic that's been brought up in the past is the cast vote record, which involves ballot images. So there's no requirement in Minnesota statute to create the cast vote record ballot images. As far as, you know, the technology is there, but as far as turning it on and creating that CVR report, we have never utilized that. We've never created, tested, or used it. There's no process, there's no need for it in our adjudication because we've always had the paper ballots. There was some effort to get the CVR ballot images from all the counties after the 2020 election. In 2023, the Minnesota legislature did make some changes that made part of that information not public data for voter privacy. There's ballot images and timestamped CVR data. There's a request for it to be randomized. If there's less than a certain number of ballots in a precinct, that's not provided. So there's nothing in, based on those statutory changes, it results in some randomized and incomplete public data that's available that has limited or no value and has the potential to be misused or to create confusion and perceptions. So our recommendation is to continue to not create the CVR ballot images. Again, we've always driven our results and our validation of those results by the paper ballots that exist in Minnesota, unlike some states that may not have the paper ballots. And we did create, in recent years, Carver County Election Integrity and Security webpage. What we've wanted to do, and it's been a goal of ours for a while, and we've made a lot of progress, but again, it's always continuous improvement, and we're always looking for more to add. We're looking to proactively get accurate information out to the public about security and the election processes to address some of those frequently asked questions. So we've got our county frequently asked questions about our equipment and our processes. We also link out to the state of Minnesota's frequently asked questions, and then some information about our equipment and our software and that. And we're always, again, that's continuous improvement. We would never consider it done. So again, we're wanting to be responsive to the questions and concerns and try to proactively get as much information out to the public as possible. Oops. I guess I went one too far. So with that, I guess we could open it to any questions.
All right, a motion to adjourn so we can, no, I'm kidding. You guys want to discuss, or should we take some more feedback from the audience? It looks like Ms. Williamson is ready for that. And
If I could, I just have a couple of questions. And Kendra, you mentioned that you're confident that the 1 a.m. reporting on election night will be vastly improved this next election, 2026?
Sorry. Yes, I am confident in that. Just based on, we're always looking for continuous improvement. Every election, we're always looking for what we can do better. I do know Dave and I have talked about, this was a little bit of a, multiple variables in place for us in 2024, the volume and the demand, and also the statutory changes of being required. So we not only had the mail that got returned till 8 p.m., but we also had the members of the public who were able to return ballots till 8 p.m. So we had them coming from multiple directions. With the volumes, when I talk, for lack of a better term, a very informal term, we talk about the onesies, twosies. When you get those returned and you have one ballot for Benton Township, or you have one ballot for City of Hamburg, the process is, the ballot board still has to go through its legal checks and balances, and it's validating everything, and the documentation, the time, the ballot, the number of ballots is this big, but the time it takes to process those onesies, twosies, and to make sure that we are documenting and logging and making sure the numbers match. We can't shortcut those processes. But what we talked about also, We talked about the judges from the party list, the 5 individuals that originally, the main statutory requirement is signature verification and ballot duplication. They were hands-on with all of the ballot processing in phase 2. I joke about that. I'm not sure that they'll answer my phone next time. I worked them kind of so hard, but they were so involved. But we want to, what I would say, heavy load that in 26, because we know our perception is the demand is not going to go down. The volume is going to be there. So with the space change of giving us more space and truly getting more people on the ballot board from the party list, and having more people involved, that we should be better positioned for 2026 and be back to more the typical when you're used to seeing results from us.
Well, Kendra, doesn't a lot of this, and it's, you don't have to defend the system because I don't think it's your fault, but don't you think software glitches probably leave some voters questioning where we're going technology-wise with all of this? Do we have a list, and you and I are always going to go have lunch and talk about the politics of all of this with the legislature, but shouldn't we be creating a list for the legislature that says we need to get a little humaneness into our voting process, that the city of Chanhassen or anybody or you would have to be open for 46 days in a row to take, but we've gone from one day with a little bit of absentee balloting to open for 46 days, which I don't understand the number 46. Couldn't be 26, 16. This isn't creating martyrs at every 87 counties and numerous cities to pull this off, is borderline insanity, I would say. So, I think we're going to have to figure out a way to cut back on this. This isn't working. And then on top of that, the USPS is delivering a bag of ballots at 8:00 on election day, and again, not your problem. Are people mailing in their ballot the day before the election? I know in some states they're going, well, why don't we just take those ballots until a week after the election? We'll just keep counting them until whenever. And so there's a variety of bizarre things going on out there, but I think this thing needs to be clamped down at risk of disenfranchising numerous parties. This needs to get back into a sane area of our government, because this is not reasonable.
Well, Mr. Chair and board members, I will just say anecdotally, as Dave referenced, there is proposed legislative changes in play. I have listened to some of the committees and seen some of the proposed statutory changes. There are a number of elements in play, such as when Dave referenced, and who knows where it lands. We never know. There's a lot of things that don't necessarily make it out of the legislative session. You know that better than I do. But there's statutory language that would allow cities and cities to only need to provide the absentee voting for the 18 days, not the entire 46. There's also proposed language to have a cutoff period for the absentee ballot application to be received for mail out, where they're proposing to establish a 7 days prior to election day deadline. That would not affect in-person voters, but trying to take out that last week of, getting the ballot mailed out. I hesitate to say very much about concerns about the post office and their processes because I'm not there, just like they're not in our election office. And I also have to be careful because my mom was a retired postmaster. Well, you gotta walk that fine line, but there were many times where I jokingly said to her, Mom, what the heck, So yeah, there are things of concern and questions. And like I said, there is some proposed statutory language. The other thing I would say too is the issue that happened in our neighboring county. There is a difference between how they have their cities do their processes and how Carver County does. Carver County for City of Waconia, we had a documented chain of custody handoff of the envelopes from City of Waconia to Carver County, and we processed them all here with our ballot board, as opposed to having the cities open those envelopes and start those processes. So there are a lot of, the other legislative topic, and then I'll kind of stop with some examples, is the best practices that we use for the tight tracking and the counting and the reconciling when you're opening those envelopes. There are best practices of accuracy and tightness of that are being done here at Carver County and at other locations in the state. That's never been statutorily defined. And there is statutory language that would put those processes, those best practices of tracking those numbers into statute so that you would not run the risk of someone offsite maybe taking a shortcut or whatever might happen. So I do know there's legislative efforts to address some of these concerns, but we'll see where we land. I can tell you that, yes, you all know my first election here was 2002, so I've been doing this a little while. How we're doing it now looks completely different than what the laws were in 2002. And so there's been a lot of changes through these 20-some years. But as we always say, we'll see what the legislature comes up with, and as we always have, we'll follow the laws as they land.
Okay, I know Patricia is ready, but everybody? Okay. Ms. Williamson?
Yes, sir. Is there a way that I can share my screen on my computer easily, or are you able to move to that? I see it says meeting presets. If I plug in my laptop, will it show?
We have an IT staff person here. Is that
Are you able
difficult?
to project my screen instead of the one that's up? Let's see.
Yeah, hold on a second. Don't start pressing buttons yet. That's what I would do. That's what I would do, and that doesn't.
Because I see here there's a lectern laptop. If I pop
It's
it.
a little more difficult, I think. We'll see if we
know.
can get somebody in the room here.
Okay.
So 2002, Kendra, was your first election. You started here when you were 8?
Something
Let's go with
close.
that.
Well, yeah, 18. Yeah, there you go. No, and so I'm Patricia Williamson. I live here in Chaska. I am the chair of the Carver County Republicans. I thank the board for having this working group and work time. Hey, it was lectern laptop. Somebody pushed. Hey.
She
So,
did nothing you supposed.
hey, I know where to. I'm
We have,
kind of
openings
okay
in
with
IT.
the IT, but I can be dangerous. So anyway, I'm so grateful that we have the opportunity to have a public working session, that we've had these in the past, and that now the board has moved to have these publicly available for people to view and to go back and watch. As someone who sits through a day job, anything after 9 a.m. usually is pretty occupied, so I did set some time aside this morning, though. One thing that we have prioritized as a County Republican Party is our election judge recruitment, retention, and training as something that's very important to us, and something that I think provides good things for the citizens to be involved and engaged in. I do commend Kendra and the county staff for their willingness to do better things. One thing that she and I informally talked about just a few weeks ago was the idea of having some more on-hand poll pad training for election judges prior to the election. I think that would be very helpful, and I've heard a lot of feedback from this past election in that regard. So if there's an improvement to be made in the processes and training available, we were looking to even do things with our partnership with a Republican women's group in the area to see if we could get some little training activities separately going, because I know other counties do that practicum training. When reviewing the statute, however, around the absentee ballot boards, I would completely disagree with Mr. Frischman's assessment here. It's very clear in the statutes as written today. Under 20, or, woo, there goes sleepy. 203B.21, ballot boards in the Minnesota statutes, the establishment of the board is what you need to start with. You got to start with when you establish that and the applicable laws, therefore, the governing body of each county, which would be you all here, and municipality or school district, have the responsibility to accept and reject those absentee ballots, and that they have to appoint that ballot board in order to administer early voting, and that's a must. So establishing that board, you must consider a sufficient number of election judges that are appointed as provided in sections 204.19 and 204B22. And those two sections deal with, starting with, who's the authority and party balance. So before you even get rolling on what the tasks are or what the responsibilities or what the must-have job is, it must start with your board has to be composed with up to 50% of the major party list. So the major party list comes down May 15th, and those people should be the priority hires for the absentee ballot board. It's pretty clear in the way it's written. I don't think there's any argument about it. I even have the House Republican reach out, one of the members of the election board or committee at the House, got one of the nonpartisan staff to do a review, which I have provided to Chair Workman. So that review was done last fall.
Ms.
This has been
Williamson, was
hided-
that
yes, sir.
that topic the basis of the Hennepin County lawsuit?
Actually, it even predates, but yes, there's inclusion of discussion around the Hennepin County lawsuit. So I think it's important to recognize that you have citizens within this county that want to be involved with the process. They want to understand, and seeing is believing. Just the fact that they need to be included is a great thing. The fact that they want to be included is a great thing. And I think there's lots of positives that can come from that inclusion, including addressing some of the concerns that were raised this morning. Having that additional manpower can take the burden off of the staff. Having more people, not less, involved in the election processing of these ballots is going to help take that strain, where that over the course of whether it's 46 days or 18, and when they come to some reasonable thinking about how long this can go on, and even late into the night on the election day, having relief staff, having people to come in fresh, having people to be able to bear that burden where it's not every day. And I remember Kendra mentioning this during the post-election review, that she had some really great staff that had worked hours on end, 19 hours a day or something along that line. It was, or 19 days in a row with, very long 14-hour days. I do appreciate the effort that has gone in, but I would say that you must start with the beginning of the statute, where your party lists are required to be the source of your hiring. And then after you do that, let's say oddity, I only turn in 5 people and you need 25. Well, obviously you're going to have to you have to go fish. You have to find other ways. But when I'm turning in 350 names to the county during an election cycle, obviously there's adequate people to choose from, many of which have served as absentee, they're regular election judges that they could serve on that absentee ballot board process prior to. So, I do agree with the idea of the changes for the legislature needing to be put through. We have an election task force as part of our party efforts that started in the fall, and we were able to provide some feedback to the Elections Committee of the House earlier this year in January. So we had a great opportunity to talk about things like vouching practices on out to the absentee ballot board and the way that we staff our cities for those elections. So I think there's a lot of things, obviously, in any process. This is a very complex one. I do commend Kendra. Her effort has been really quite great and very well experienced. And she's dealing with a changing dartboard all the time. She's been very accommodating in any of our election review work, which has been very nice. I do appreciate the openness in which the county board members have been available as well for that requirement. But I think we need to prioritize the citizens of the Carver County area for working our elections. It's our elections, it's our county, and the people deserve that opportunity to be engaged the most. There are possibilities of statute coming down as changes. I know there's a bill right now, I think it's House File 1800 or 1840. Maybe it's 1840. I'll have to go look. But it has some of the changes. It re-emphasizes the vouching window. If you have a facility such as a nursing home, treatment center, they must, by statute, register facility staff 20 days prior to the election. It's a requirement. There's even a special form that the SOS has available online. And that form needs to be filled out by the staff and provided with evidence that those people are legitimately coming to vouch for a particular precinct or whatever that might be. I happen to know personally that there was an incident in Chaska where someone was allowed to vouch for multiple people, and it was just considered just fine. These kinds of things need to be reviewed again with the city municipal staff. It's not really necessarily the county's problem. It's city training and so forth, but that also runs through our elections here. So those kinds of things, I think having better clarity, better understanding, and reading the statute directly, because one thing that we've noticed that there's sometimes where the guidance documents coming from the Secretary of State's office are not complete, and this must exhaust the party list element has been dropped out of their guidance conveniently, and I think that needs to be well understood. So thank you very much again for the opportunity. Any questions from the board for me?
I think it's just a question. Thank you for being here, Ms. Williams. I appreciate that. And I appreciate that you and the other major party, both major parties, hopefully will step up, both major parties, and help us recruit election judges. I think that's huge, because I know that's been a huge issue at the county. So I appreciate your support and partnership in that piece, and so thank you.
There's one other thing about that. So we did, and one thing that was also problematic that would be nice is if the county would agree to sharing in advance of the election, not weeks after, the people that are selected for the absentee ballot board, so that we can verify and help fill gaps. Because when I have 348 names come down and I get 3 people that are utilized, that's not party balance on the entire complement of that board. The other thing that was not transparent was the early in-person voting. I have no idea who worked that precinct-looking operation. We don't have any party balance. There was no one in there from the major party list at all during those 18 days of early voting. I have no idea who was working in there. They certainly weren't off our list, and there was no disclosure as to who worked it after the fact even.
Thank
Other
you.
than it came from the absentee ballot board members in some manner. So, lack of transparency.
We have a question from the audience.
Well, not a question. I was looking for an opportunity to speak.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Paul.
this should be a good time. Good to see you again.
I am Paul Hake, Chanhassen, 261 Hidden Lane. I actually have a long history here. I was the watershed lawyer for many, many years, and so I have a long background in government. I'm an attorney. And when I want to step back and say 3 points. The first point is, what's driving some of this anxiety? Because there's anxiety and you hear it regularly coming up. Now, how did we get to that anxiety? The core principle is that when you change the form of government, there are consequences. And the things that we're talking about are consequences that have flowed from changes in the form of government we have had. What are those changes? Earliest change was the creation of the county administrator. Originally, county commissioners ran the county. And for administrative purposes, we created the position of county administrator. Second thing that we really did at a fundamental level was we took the county auditor and took away the county auditor, and the county board assumed the authority of the duties of the county auditor. Now, those are earlier changes. The county commissioners or county administrators were first started in the late 60s, but grew in powers in the 70s. In 2005 or so is when we created and took away the county auditor and put it inside the county commissioners. And why is that important? Because before that time, the county auditor handled those electoral issues. So you transferred those duties into you. And why is that important? When I want to change a county auditor, that's only one vote. If I want to change a county commissioner, I got to have at least 3 votes. I got to do something. If I want things to be different, there's a lack of further separation from citizen control of what's going on. Now, those are long-term changes that have occurred. But the key thing that's led to this anxiety is the change of administrator, the change of auditor into you was then laid on top of changes, electoral changes that began in 2010, in which we began the legislature began a continuous process of evolving how we vote, the eligibility to vote, what to vote. And one of the things I've done, I've gotten a series of talks to some of the citizens out in Carver County about these, where I've reviewed all those electoral changes. Who made them? When did they make them? Who was advocating this law? And what happened is we're not prepared for the changes that we started 2010 to the present in how we vote. And that change has led to a separation where people no longer feel connected to their vote. They no longer feel that. And what the political consequence of that is, it erodes people's confidence in the legitimacy of government. And the key point for you as commissioners is when you're elected, they all go to work. They don't think about that. And in their heart, they say, we have elected you with trust that you will watch for or explain what these things are. And that you will, if you see something wrong, you will say something. And what's happened now is that has broken down for a variety of reasons. Having done literally an electoral study of all the changes that occurred, from the legislature all the way through to who was doing it, that's where people say, hey, I don't have confidence now in that you're hearing or communicating to me the importance and the consequences of these electoral changes. I'll give one example. Can dead people vote? Do you know the answer? If you do not know the answer of who can vote, that's important. But our law, actually, we created a law, the dead vote can count in certain circumstances. And it's like, wait a minute. I'm not saying you're the driver of those changes, but I'm saying those changes haven't come out to a common understanding. And so my main point here is to say, first, recognize the importance of the structure of our government. And when we change those, that structure doesn't have an immediate impact. It's a long-term impact. And so when you're thinking about it, What I'd encourage you to do in hearing these details, Kendra's not the driver of this. It's been driven by different levels by many, many votes. But the first thing I recommend is that you take the time to actually go back. What has happened from 2010 to now in the electoral changes? Inform yourself of those and then ask yourself at each point, does this make sense? Do I understand the consequence that comes from that? And have I gone to my particular people that I represent that voted for me? Have I explained that to them? And the second piece is that whether you like it or not, one aspect of your electoral duties is to work with the legislators. And you have an ability and you have a position that you can provide an education role for them. They cannot handle it all. They cannot. And so that's what I'm here to begin to talk about, to encourage you to think more deeply about it and to inform yourself at a far deeper level. And what is the ultimate objective that we're seeking? That we as a community have a profound duty that we need to begin to think about. How do we rebuild the skills of citizen governance? Having represented public bodies and sued virtually every county, city, state agency that I have done over the last 40 years, I have seen the erosion in skills of citizen governance. And what's most important at this level where you are at is the ability to have public discussion and bring that discussion forward in a way that allows deep consideration of it. And so I hate to have lectured you a little bit, but I felt it is very important that we step back a little bit and look at these foundational principles and that we begin to say, what is a process that you can create that will allow you as a group to look through these changes? Rather than being reactive, let's start with how did we get here? And now once we clearly know how we got here, you will be better informed and prepared to say, when Kendra comes in and says, they're proposing an idea, we can go back to fundamentals and say, dear legislator, no. Your voice to a legislator is far more powerful than actual citizen voices. You have that ability. And I'm encouraging you to pursue it to the fullest extent that you can, all for that fundamental goal of how do we rebuild citizen governance? Because if we wish to be a free people, we must restore those skills. So that's my thought for today. And I have to go to work now, too, unless you had a question.
Don't sue us, Paul.
Thank you for that.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
all righty.
Thank you for that. And you have to
Okay,
be
I
able
do
to-
have to go to work though, so I'll try to come again.
Thank you, Paul. You have to be able to reach your legislator.
Right?
Yes, sir. Could you identify yourself?
My name is David Meisner, and I am in Chaska Ward 4. My background is IT and logistics, and often dealing with security issues in those fields. I wanted to say one thing concerning what Patty has said. Another statute was 204.21, which clearly says that at least 2 election judges must be in each precinct, must be affiliated with different major political parties, and if no lists have been furnished, or if additional election judges are required after all lists have been exhausted, then they can appoint other judges. So that was something that the Secretary of State omitted from his election, his county election administration guide. So we should remind everybody that that guide is not the law. The statute is the law, and that's what we should adhere to. So,
David,
What-
was that 20421?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, subdivision 2. All right, so I want to thank you all for being here and let me speak. With regard to the 2024 election, I personally witnessed issues that I found to be very concerning. One issue is the absence of uniquely numbered seals on all of the ballots and envelopes in Carver County. On November 18th, I was at the post-election review, and while I was there, after the ballots were removed from the boxes, I asked one of the election officials who was present here today if I could inspect one of the empty boxes, and I was told, that the ballots were stored in. I was told that that was not part of the process. But I then asked if the seals themselves were uniquely numbered, and I was told that the county was not statutorily required to have unique numbers on those seals. After speaking with several election judges working in the election in Carver County, I was told that those seals were nothing more than a blank label with signatures on them, that people would sign. It's important to note that those same election judges were not present at the PER to verify those signatures. So at any point, those could have been completely swapped out with other boxes or envelopes of ballots, and no one would have noticed, okay? Minnesota Statute 203B.121, subdivision 5, includes in section A, on the day in which absentee ballots are inserted into a ballot box, 2 members of the ballot board must, and I'll advance to line 3, seal and secure all voted and unvoted ballots present in the location of that day, at the end of that day. Section 204C.08, subdivision 4, includes each seal shall consist of a numbered strap with a self-locking device securely attached to one end of the strap so that the other end may be inserted and securely locked in the seal. No 2 straps shall bear the same number. And these, again, were not numbered seals at all. Now, without secure seals like this, absentee ballots were essentially, when not in the presence of party balanced election judges, they're left unprotected for up to 3 weeks. That's a pretty sad case there. Serialized seals are essential to ensuring the security of protected ballots. A proper chain of custody would require both the uniquely numbered seals accompanied by a chain of custody log that documents the date and time that the seals are broken, when they were broken, by who they were broken, and the number of the new seal that replaced it. Anything less than this should be considered a breach of security, compromising the chain of custody and the integrity of the ballots. Ballots should never be left in the hands of anyone other than party balanced election judges once they're open. So until we demonstrate that our elections meet these basic yet critical measures, the people of Minnesota are going to continue to believe that our elections are plagued with misconduct. It's our responsibility to prove them wrong. So I believe we have an opportunity here in Carver County to set a higher standard for election integrity, one that can serve as a model for the entire state of Minnesota to follow. And I encourage every one of you to consider these minimal measures and ensure that those implementing them are thoroughly educated on the procedures involved. And that's pretty much all I got to say. Any questions?
Well, thank you. Mr. Fishman, do we need individually numbered seals?
The law says we do.
So I would just say that it depends upon which area of statute you're reading, but as far as the ballot boxes, when we are doing the absentee voting period where we're getting the envelopes, those are placed into blue ballot boxes that do have numbered seals that are signed by 2 individuals, and those remain sealed. And then when we open those ballot boxes to start processing them to put through the tabulator, we document that that is the seal number that was there and in place. So I would have to do a little bit more research to make sure to match up, but our position in looking at the statutes and the various sections of statutes and the process as being described in that particular section, because there are different sections of statute, but that we do have uniquely numbered seals when required by the statutes.
but not
We would be
individual
happy to
ballots.
investigate and get additional information. As we always tell people, give us some specific information, what specific statute we'd be absolutely wanting to look into it further to make and check with the county attorney's office, as we always do.
Okay, David?
Would that include both the boxes and the envelopes for absentee ballots? And if you have a log for that, could we get a copy of that by chance? Could we access that?
I think we would need to discuss and
But you're
not
willing to do
really-
that?
we would, again, look at the statute and check with our county attorney and make sure
All
our
right.
processes.
I'd say without it, we have a serious problem in Carver County.
Are you a log of the boxes or a log of the
A log of
individual
every time a
ballots?
seal was broken and replaced, and that they were never actually left untampered. So it would be a log, a chain of custody log that accompanies and has every seal listed on those logs,
Okay, we can.
and the
look at-
reason for breaking them.
We will note
Now,
it.
Can I have one more
Sure.
comment? It was, Kendra, it was you that I spoke to at the PER. So when
If
you
you'll go to
brought
the
those-
microphone, please.
Oh, sorry. When you brought those ballots into the PER, the boxes and so forth, it was you that told me that you weren't required to have numbered seals on them. So am I to believe then, are we to believe that from the time of the time they were opened, or what time did you stop using those seals up until the post-election review? That's what my question would be, because if there was any time whatsoever, they are compromised.
Well, I don't know, Kendra, if you're willing to, the he said, she said, are we?
I'm not trying to do that, I'm
Yeah,
just,
yeah. So just to clarify, the question at the post-election review was about the white, they're basically white transfer cases. It's what the precincts return back to us at the polling place. They seal over them. Those are not numbered seals from the polling places. They have two individuals that return the voted ballots as well as other required materials to our office. We document those being returned, and then those are sealed in our holding cells until the post-election review. And that's when they're brought out of the secure storage. So I think one of the questions that I'm hearing specifically is the ballot, the transfer cases from the polling place to the county offices, those transfer cases with the election judge signatures from election night. Those were the boxes that did not have a numbered seal on them. And we opened those sealed boxes in the presence of the election judges that were working the post-election
you
review.
brought out the absentee ballots right after that. Those were sealed with numbered seals.
Not at that point, no. But again, we can discuss and look at the statutes and make sure that we're following the law and then discuss further.
Okay.
All right.
All right,
That's all
David?
I have.
Yep,
Yeah,
thank
thanks.
you, David.
Sir.
Yes, sir, in the back.
My name is Al Sherwood, and I live in Chanhassen.
Hi, Al.
I think I can add some clarity to Dave's report earlier when he was talking about confusion. It was just touched on by the previous speaker, but yeah, Simon has in place a website. It's called Reviser of Statutes. And he permits, doesn't require, but permits certain things, one of which is ignore party balance and use county employees to constitute absentee ballot boards. The second thing is he allows for anybody to sign an absentee ballot. Not the voter, but anybody can sign it. And he does this by saying that you only need to verify the signature if the names are different. So in effect, anybody can sign an absentee ballot. So we're being told this morning that we are following legislative law, and I think that is great to hear. So I would ask that next year, when you two are delivering your report, you add two things to it. One is the date when the absentee ballot board was constituted and the names and party affiliations of all of those people. And secondly, an audit confirming that all absentee ballot boards have verified signatures. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Dee Martineau. I just had one comment regarding the cast vote records. I remember a couple years ago, 2022, being one of the people who wrote to the Elections Department asking for those cast vote records to be turned on. I think it's important for transparency. I don't pretend to be an expert in how all of that, would work. But I do think that in the interest of transparency, there were thousands of people minimum around the country who requested this of their counties. And I don't see any reason why. If it's something simple, why wouldn't you want to do it? Just one more transparency, a piece of transparency for us to have it that requested it. People all over the country wanted it. Why is it something that we can't have? I believe that it could tell us a lot about the votes and what really happened. So I am saying in the interest of trying to make people have a better sense of that the elections, have fairness and accuracy, that those be turned on. I absolutely think so, along with all the other people around this nation who requested them as well. I do have one other quick thing just off this topic, and I apologize, but I just want to say, in the interest of schools and President Trump's DEI thing. I know this is off topic, but just 1 second to say that I do know weeks ago he mentioned that he wanted the DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion, out of the schools. And I have come across a job posting that is in the Eastern Carver County Schools that was posted, interestingly, after that on March 14th. That is open right now and is open until March 28th, where they are actually hiring for an achievement and inclusion supervisor for the Eastern Carver County Schools. And that is a $104,000 salary position. I'm concerned that we are progressing, moving ahead on this and asking for this when there are a lot of people in our community who are opposed to this DEI initiatives going on in our schools. And I would like to know why we are pursuing this. Granted, February 28th was supposed to be the date originally that schools did not have to, that were supposed to comply between, schools and colleges. And I understand that that has lapsed, but why? Why 2 weeks later did we come out to fill a position?
That's a different level of government here.
Got it.
Yeah.
Just saying.
That's
And,
not
and
us.
I just wanted that so Carver County community members can know that this is happening. So if people are so moved, want to contact the school district, they can. Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
Dee. We're not going to hear from Chanhassen today yet. Ms. Ray.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to flip-flop between a few things. And honest to goodness, I do in fact have a magic wand, which Mr. Degler is aware of, but I didn't bring it with me today. But if I did, I couldn't have teed it up any better for what I wanted to talk about today. So,
Are you
first-
referring to Commissioner Workman as Commissioner Degler?
No, I met with Mr. Degler. What month is this? A long time ago. And so I've got a couple of topics to discuss, and I'm going to start first with something that I received yesterday from Mr. Frischman. So it was communication, and he said, Kendra and I are not aware of any statutory reference to support your opinion that the commissioners are in charge of the elections. If you could please provide us with relevant statutory reference and/or additional information to support your opinion, we would greatly appreciate it. Now, just so that you know, publicly, when Mr. Frischman has responded to my requests over the last 3 years, I don't even necessarily open them for a day or two or three because I know that this is the kind of answer that I get. I don't really ever get an answer, I get a response. And my response to you, Mr. Frischman, is teed up by Mr. Hikes, who talked about how when we removed the auditor, that became your bosses. So the question is, who do the election clerk or the auditor work for? If the clerk and auditor work for the commissioners, then the commissioners are in charge. So you guys work for the commissioners, correct?
No, they work for the
If
administration.
you're elected positions, they are autonomous. Are they elected? Are you elected? Is the auditor elected? Okay, so that makes the commissioners in charge of the elections. And I wanted to make a distinction in the two areas of election concern. One is the fact that we do not follow the law to the T or even close to the C, D, or E. Yes, I have acknowledged that I have concerns about that, but once someone comes in and doesn't speak English and has no idea where they live or where their address is, and their name is listed as a registered voter, voila, they vote, as happened in this last election. And their vote is counted. So there's nothing really that stops those procedures from happening. And those are things that many people here brought up for concern. And then there is actually election fraud in the elections, and that's something that we really don't talk much about. What I was a little surprised about here is starting back in July, almost 3 years ago, coming up in a couple of months, the statutes that we were talking about with absentee ballot boards where there needed to be major party ballots were repeated at least a dozen times on the July 19th, 2022 Commissioners meeting. That meeting is actually on Rumble if you need a little refresher. And that's the only thing we've ever been asking for, or let me rephrase that I have ever been asking for is major party balance, because it's common sense. Whether I talk to a Democrat, a Republican, a socialist, they all say, yes, it's common sense to have a Republican and a Democrat in the A to Z process counting our votes, whether it be in person or absentee. I've never pursued the in-person at the precinct because that's nothing but great people who sign up, do the best they can with what they've got, and people hopefully have fun at the job. I had a ball passing out the I voted sticker, and when I noticed at the last elections, we did not adopt the little cute things for the children who are so excited to get a sticker, and they get this very plain I voted sticker. So I was hoping that that might have been implemented, but it wasn't. So I've got a couple of questions. If you feel comfortable raising your hand. Have any of you been in the military before? Have any of you served in the military that are on the board? Nobody served in the military. Have either of you two served in the military, our county commissioner or our, okay. Military?
I've been married for 41 years,
Well, that's a different kind of military.
and so I know how to follow orders.
Does anybody here with a show of hand think that the tabulators are connected to the internet? Do they think they're a computer that connect to the internet?
I don't think they're supposed to be. I'm going to defer to Kendra.
So we're not answering, or we're saying no? Because here's a picture of the logic and accuracy test that was from the primary that does show that they are in fact modem with Verizon, and they are in fact connected. So that is in fact in our voting tabulators. So if there's ever any question on this, which the fact that these pictures were actually taken on some of the tape, another disappointment from not only my city, but my county, is we requested those printout tapes from each of the machines so that we could see what the accuracy and logic reports actually did at the primary. And we were told, we have no idea what that is. We have no idea what you're talking about. Well, this is it, and I've got lots of pictures that I can share with you as to what the actual printout is of that machine. One thing that surprised me with that is the actual machine itself. When they do the test, they'll have like under 50. As a matter of fact, I think it's under 40. Is it 38 total ballots that they test? And of those 38, I think there's 4 that have a couple of different ones, and then like the rest of the votes are blank, so they don't even test like what all the different options are. That really shocked me. And then, of course, we were told we couldn't be anywhere near watching the testing or the balloting or them putting it in or them making the ballots or what the printouts came from the machine, which is really, I don't have words for that. So then I wanted to let you know that I had, in response to a couple of things here with the, we have no idea that we need to have, which was reported, and I asked you to repeat that. I wasn't sure if I was hearing that right. This is actually from a police report from something that I had initiated 2 years ago, and it says, Ms. Olson confirmed that municipalities are required to select election judges within party parity and are not to exceed 50% of judges associated with a single political affiliation. So we have no idea, we were totally confused, we don't know how to read that statute. To me was a little mind-boggling. I was wondering if anybody could tell me what the secret sauce is here for us to have almost 100% turnout, over 50% above the national average. Nobody knows what the secret sauce is?
Engaged voters.
And then last but not least, I am wondering, we had two separate people that I had spoke with, and it was actually brought in front of a commissioners meeting, and I did in fact email all of you. I was looking for an answer. I will assume maybe the attorney will answer this question. Why did we have two separate election judges in Chanhassen be told to sign as though the envelope is closed, but do not close that envelope at the end of election night?
So wasn't this a part of the sheriff's investigation?
You know, I just picked that report up this morning. They're so wonderful over there. I did, in fact, actually mention something about that. And in these 16 pages, I even told them who the people were because they weren't necessarily brave enough to want to come forward and report that and make it a whole big deal themselves. Not a single mention in here. Which one of you commissioners thought that that was alarming enough to inquire? None of you? I'm going to be doing another round, which was very fun before, of going to all my cities and townships within Carver County. And I'll just share that we've been told to do that there wasn't a single commissioner that found that of any interest. Did our attorney question that or follow up, or did our administrator follow up? So nobody followed up. Nobody had any interest whatsoever on why election judges were told to sign as though it's sealed, but do not seal that envelope.
Mr.
I
Chairman,
find that very interesting.
Mr. Metz?
I don't know if this is the right forum, Ms. Ray, for like a question and answer about those specifics. I can tell you that from our office, if we get reports from law enforcement to review and make a determination if there are any criminal charges, we do that. And so we don't have public information to that extent. You could contact the sheriff's office on that. So I don't know, the specifics about what you're talking about, but.
Well, it was here in front of
If I-
the commissioners'
just-
meeting.
If I can just finish for 1 second. So if we do get allegations of a crime, so if there's voter fraud, if there's an investigation, it is sent to our office for review. We will review that and determine if there are probable cause to charge a crime or that we don't believe that there's sufficient evidence to pursue that. So that's the process that we go through. And so we do not have any voter fraud cases that are pending, that we have charged, that are in our criminal justice system.
Well, I don't know if that's voter fraud, but something very goofy. That's very, to me, alarming.
Well,
That
Ms. Ray,
people are
what's
told by a
alarming
city
that-
clerk.
That there are no names in the report?
No, that the city clerk is telling judges to sign as though that envelope is closed with the ballots in it, but don't close the envelope.
Which city clerk?
Do I want to say that publicly?
Well, you don't have to, but so there's a specific city clerk that made this allegation?
That told
And was
two
witnessed
separate
by-
people. One person came up here and told all of you at a meeting that this is what she was told to do. Another person was actually in the audience that day, chose, since the one person talked about it, not to speak about it again. Why in the world was a election judges told to sign but not close the envelope. Would you like to address this?
I think we did, and Mr. Chair and board members, we did address this at the meeting that she's referencing. We did let everybody know that that was the first we were hearing about that. We were not made aware of that at the time on election day. We were hearing about this after the fact. That is not the training that's provided. They are directed, we have in our training to, that they are to seal those envelopes and the election judges sign over the envelopes. And we made the commitment to make sure that is clear at our training, which we did do. And we have no indication that this happened again. But I think we said at the time that that would be something we couldn't speak to as far as what they were saying. They were directed by the city clerk, but that did not follow our training protocols and the information provided at training
Okay, so
from
you're,
the county's perspective.
Kendra, you're aware of this clerk?
We got told what city it was and that they were directed by that city clerk. And again, that was the first we had heard of that. That clerk is not the clerk at this time. But
They were told to do that, but did they do it? Did they do it? Did they seal it?
No.
that's what we're hearing, again, anecdotally, because we weren't in the room either. at
And you
the
were
polling
all
place.
told this at a commissioners meeting.
Well, I
Ms.
was-
Ray, we're told a lot of things at a county board that may or may not be true, and still don't have any evidence of anything until, I guess, you provide it to me. So I think the board is kind of at a situation where we're hearing it again, but if nothing's been acted upon, what are we supposed to do? We weren't there.
I would have assumed that if I were sitting in your position, I would have inquired as to what in the HE double toothpick is going on that a clerk is telling election judges to sign as though that's closed, but do not close the envelope at the end on election night.
Well, I appreciate that information. It doesn't seem like it'd be that hard to figure that out, so.
And we still haven't found anything out, and we still have no reason for that.
That was not the direction from the county.
Well, I know that, but why did it happen?
Ms. Ray?
You never even asked.
Ms. Ray,
Okay, well,
you should really direct more of your conversation to us
okay.
and less to staff. Remember, we're the auditors. It's up to us. So talk to us. We got the information.
But you put this person as your buffer all the time. You never answer questions, which is why I'm so thankful that we actually have a working meeting to ask questions and be more than a couple minutes. So I do thank you for that.
Thank you.
And may I make a comment? And I've heard many instances as far as training. And of course, I spent the last 30 years, making a living doing training. So I'm always happy when training raises as one of the solutions. So I appreciate, Kendra, you probably know more about elections than anybody in this room. And I appreciate that. So I think what's important is to ensure that we have an ample amount of election judges properly trained, and we know our statutes and our processes and procedures going forward. And so part of having this, and thank you all for being here today, is this is the start. It's always good to know what went well and what needs to be improved. And I trust that the issues that were brought up today will be addressed, and we'll continue to have smooth elections going forward.
Mr. Frischman.
Mr. Chair and board members, just follow up, just a little bit on the background of that. As Kendra said, we heard about it for the first time at a board meeting. Kendra did follow up and verify that the training that we had was what was supposed to be. This person, it's what happens at a city clerk in a city precinct is their business. We try and train them and we try and help them do everything right, but at the end of the day, we're not there. As you said, Kendra wasn't there, I wasn't there, you guys weren't there. There was a sheriff's report that was submitted. There was allegations made in that sheriff's report about various things that weren't following right, and the sheriff's deputy said that all the evidence and nothing was substantiated. All the evidence they found was that the rules have been followed. So we relied on that report to to believe that everything was fine. But there's some lingering questions, so we can certainly follow up on that. And the other questions that were raised about the statutes. And the only thing I want to make sure is, when you read a statute, and when it says precinct, they're talking about the city precinct. They're not talking about the absentee ballot board. So it does get confusing, as McHenry was mentioning, depending on what statute you're talking about. They're either talking about the absentee ballot board, which has certain rules, or they're talking about the precincts, and they have certain rules, and they don't always go back and forth. So it does get a little confusing, and I think that's where a fair amount of confusion has been over the last couple of years about those issues. And then we've worked through them with the county attorney's office and with different people, and we usually get them resolved and figured out. So we'll do that again with the ones that are raised today.
Yes, sir.
Based on what you just said.
David, can you come on up to the podium? And Mr. Fishman, maybe if there's a sheriff's report, the board could get a copy of that.
Again, David Meisner, based on what you had just said, that the county office and the precincts are two distinctly different locations according to statute, is that what you're implying? Is that what he is implying, is what I'm wondering? Because I think any place where ballots are actually handled and open and so forth serves as a polling place. So it's sort of a precinct by proxy. And every law or statute that applies to a precinct should apply at that time to the county office that is doing this tabulation or handling of ballots, period. So I think to try and find a loophole in the law is kind of disingenuous from that
I mean,
point.
it's a loophole. I think it's very clearly stated in the statutes.
Back then, actually, all the precincts did handle the ballots. The county office did not. And the laws were changed to allow the county offices to do that. Maybe the statutes weren't updating their language to account for that. But I would say that the county office by proxy is a polling place or a precinct. So that's just my opinion there. So.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Our guests from Chanhassen are just here to observe. I'm not gonna sign off on any seals in front of those guys.
I guess I will say one thing.
Yes.
I think as having a legislator brain of my own, it is sort of odd. The legislature, I think, has made things more complicated on purpose. And that's not a conspiracy theory or other, but as I've watched the legislature tinker with election law specifically, it sure does. It does raise questions. Maybe back to Mr. Hake. It does raise questions about the motives of some people. It should be simple. It should be clean and clear and democratic. And there are tectonic plates trying to shove things in political directions. And so, anyway, good to see you.
Thank you. Debbie Lloyd Chanhassen. Chanhassen. I was going to speak today, but then I realized this is a county forum. With regard to the city of Chanhassen and our public accuracy tests, I have really serious doubts about the training from the county for the city accuracy tests, the public accuracy tests. And I would like improved training and better clarification of the public involvement in those. That those also should have party balance when those accuracy tests are run. I can tell you in Chanhassen, unfortunately, they did not. And when you're testing accuracy, sitting 5 feet back from the test doesn't make sense. When you can't see and understand what is happening or be able to take a picture afterwards of the tape so that you can have confidence in the systems, why even have public accuracy tests? I mean, I'd like to go there and be confident that what I'm watching makes sense and that I have full view of it at that point in time. That would give me 100% confidence that everything else was flowing correctly. So that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you.
Training, training.
See, music to my ears. Thank you. Thank you for advancing my profession.
Hi, Bucks. Okay, anybody else? You here for the league? Does the league have anything to say? We haven't seen your face around here for a little while. Uh-oh, I made her think about it.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners and the rest of the public that's here. My name is Sarah Carlson. I live in Chaska, and I am not here on behalf of the League of Women Voters. I'm here because I'm an interested, and I would say committed individual to democracy. I would, just in response to our last speaker, I did attend the public accuracy testing for the City of Chaska equipment. I was extremely disappointed that I was the only individual from the City of Chaska that participated in those tests. I spent the greater part of an entire morning, maybe 3+ hours, with the individuals who were testing the equipment, and I was amazed at the thoroughness of the tests that the individuals performed, my ability to interact and ask questions about the equipment, and even my ability to attempt to I'll use the word trick the machines. And I could not. And they could not allow my false answers to proceed. So I would applaud the work that we have done here in Carver County. I certainly appreciate the staff of our Carver County Elections Office and their willingness to provide that training. Speaking to Commissioner Anderson's profession. And I look forward to the continued transparency that our office here in Carver County provides to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Ms. Ray, one more?
Ms. Carlson, can I clarify, was that the city of Chaska or the county of Chaska?
City.
City of Chaska.
The city of Chaska. Well, Kendra, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm going to give, Mr. Chair and board members and the public, I'm going to give a little bit of clarification of the public accuracy testing in Carver County and how it's done. The 4 largest cities, so Chaska, Chan, Victoria, Waconia, they hold separately scheduled public accuracy tests that they run. Now, they do get the testing materials from us. The procedures and protocols do follow our guidelines, but they handle the scheduling and the logistics of that in their public accuracy tests themselves. The rest of the smaller cities and all of the townships, we host public accuracy testing sessions here at the county location. And we did that in the EOC the last couple of election cycles. And so again, they follow our procedures and protocols. And just to speak a little bit to Ms. Ray's, and those of you that have known me for even a fraction of a short while know that when you ask me an election question, you're going to get more than you're going to get more, not less.
That is so true.
And I will get into the weeds, so I apologize. And Dave tries to help me get from too deep into the weeds. But to Ms. Ray's point, there are strategically blank ballots in the stack of test ballots that go through the equipment. We are required by law to put blank ballots through. We are required by law to put overvoted ballots through. So the procedures and the protocols of the ballot stack that go through the equipment is driven by statute. It's also very intentional that those are pre-marked to create a unique set of results across the ballot. Not just in Carver County. We don't just create unique results for candidates within an office. I also make sure that there's not any similar office results across the ballot. So there's unique results across the entire ballot. So the ballots are marked accordingly. So to do that, you have to have some offices left blank. Otherwise, you're not going to create those uniquenesses that prove the accuracy of the machines. So it may seem odd to a layperson looking at the stack of ballots of, well, they didn't even mark everything. That's intentional. That's to create those unique results that we need. So the procedures and protocols that we're required by law to do a public test to prove that the results are accurately reflected. We also make sure, as I think Ms. Carlson was referencing, we need to make sure that if it's a City of Carver machine, that somebody from the City of Norwood, Young America can't come and throw in. They only are supposed to accept the right ballot style. So again, I warn you, I could really get into the weeds and take everybody else's rest of their day by talking the specifics of equipment testing. But those procedures and protocols are driven for a reason, to make sure that we know before we deploy that equipment to the polling place that it's going to function correctly. And as far as I am hearing, that there's differences within some of those other public tests as far as how close the public can be and such. So I will defer to their municipalities as far as decisions as how close they can be and all the other elements of that we're hearing, so.
Okay, back to the board here. Anybody have a comment?
If I could, Mr. Chair, I thought we had a great conversation today, and Kendra and Dave, if I could see, I'd like to have our attorneys review 204B.19, 204B.22, and then also, I think Mr. Meisner brought up 204.21. If we'd get a wording on that to make sure I'd want to, and Kendra, we had a conversation before, and it's your words, continuous improvement. We can always look at ourselves and see if there's anything we can do to make it even do better. I thought Mr. Meisner had another great comment about if we have the signed labels over the top, his point is you could change it out. But to have the seals on there wouldn't be that encumbersome either. So if that's something we could look at too, just have that plastic seal that when they're both broken together, it would actually prove that it was never broken. So anything that we can do to ensure voter integrity, I think just let's look at that. So anyway.
Commissioner Zuderman or Fahey?
Yep.
Yep.
So I think it's a great chance to listen. I don't claim to be Steve Simon on a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning from a quarterback standpoint, but we learned too, hopefully. I don't know that I learned a whole lot today, but I listened a lot. And then if there's things that we need to act on, hopefully they deliver the result we want, because sometimes we act in a way that delivers the results we don't want. And so as I'm listening, maybe Commissioner Workman would be the best one to answer this after 10 years of the legislature, but it feels like sometimes we're in the wrong room. It feels like maybe if Steve Simon was here, the lawmakers were here, that'd be a better audience. And it feels like sometimes our staff is the punching bag because we don't like things, or we get caught up in some of the media stuff or whatever it is. And I say that because sometimes people tell Kendra, I've been there when people have said it, you need to do this. It's the statute. Well, they're not qualified, right? So then we have to go to Mark Metz and his team, and they're qualified, but they have to ask a whole bunch more questions at the state. Why don't we just go to Steve Simon and his team? And so a couple questions maybe for you, Kendra and team, is there ever a window where Steve Simon's group comes out and asks the county folks, what are the areas that we can improve? And is there, to borrow the gal in the back's comment about accuracy testing, is there a process where the state comes out and says, yep, you are in compliance? Because it feels like we're always chasing this elusive gray area. And that gray area can be, Kendra, you're required to do it. Kendra, you're allowed to do it. We prefer if you do it. And then you're requested to do it. And so it feels like there's a lot of garbage in between. Maybe it'd be great if Steve Simon was here. And as you approach the podium, another comment, it's not lost on me that if not the closest, two of the closest elections in the state were in the Southwest Metro. Not just the Tapkey race in Scott County, which got a lot of the fanfare. And maybe we should spend more of our time talking about elections across the state versus a single election. That was important and fired up and politically charged for sure. But I think unofficially, the second closest election in the state was in Carver County. It was the Rem Steffenhagen race. And so this topic isn't going to go away. We kind of sit in a powder keg because it is so close. A lot of money is going to be spent in 26 elections for sure, no doubt about it. We're going to be facing some of the same questions. And so wouldn't it be great if somebody from Simon's office or Steve was here to hear what you have to say and people like you to say, where are there opportunities that we can close the gap? And maybe they could answer the questions better than our staff trying to deflect or ask or get our piece of it. So I'm just curious, is there some accuracy test or, do we get high marks from Steve Simon's office to say we're doing a great job?
Commissioner Uterman and Mr. Chair and board members, yes, there is. And we actually just, people may not be aware, we talked about the post-election review, which is required by law, that is a checking of the accuracy of the results that were reported on election night. So we do that hand count to make sure the ballots were counted correctly. There's also then a next level that happens at the state canvass meeting from the precincts that were selected across the state for that post-election review. They select at random then additional post-election audit. It's provided then that there needs to be, for each, I won't, again, caution, get into the weeds here, but there needs to be representation in that post-election audit of every congressional district. We had 2 of our 3 precincts that we had to do for post-election review. 2 of the 3 were selected for the post-election audit. When you do the post-election audit that's taking place across the state, that is with the Secretary of State's office and their staff. And they are looking more into the processes and the procedures and the forms and what are our training materials? What about our testing materials? So they go into all of those procedures and protocols and do a look. And anecdotally, I can tell you Carver County has always got nothing but very high marks. I will tell you, just this is a personal point of pride for me, with the level of testing that we do, I get told it should be a model for the state. I come from a testing background. I didn't, as a child, say, I want to be an election administrator in my future. I have no ideas. It's like, if you would have told me this is what I would be doing as my career, I would be surprised. I came from actually a software IT background and a software testing background, which gives me a little bit of a different view of these testing procedures and protocols. Our testing procedures are particularly called out for high marks, and actually got asked again from the Secretary of State's office to give them some materials that they can maybe look at and see if we can get a little bit more consistency with that testing at the level that we do. But to answer a little bit more directly to your point, as far as, do they ever ask you, hey, what are you struggling with or what do you need help with? Yes, and I would tell you that as positive as I feel throughout my 20-some years of doing this for Carver County, that is a level of dialogue and engagement and partnership that's higher more recently. What I heard in that post-election audit is that some of the struggles and some of the concerns are not just ours, they're consistent with what they're hearing from some of the other county offices. And talking about additional engagement, training, clarifications, and what can they do to kind of take some of the, I don't want to say ambiguity, but get things a little tighter. And so I am hearing that from the state. Now, as far as how that translates to legislative decisions, I know people if I had a nickel for every time I get asked, well, don't you think it should be this way? Don't you think it should be that way? And I've had to say this, and I help staff, and I help send this message to election judges. My personal opinions have no bearing. My job is to uphold the laws as they're currently written and try to make sure that our procedures and protocols follow the statutes and rules of Minnesota as they're currently written. And as I referenced, they look completely different than my first election in 2002. As the member of the public said, and I talk about this all the time, when I started here, we didn't process the absentee ballots at the county level as an absentee ballot board. We made sure that we got them back from the voters and we delivered them to the polling places through secured chain of custody protocols of handoffs to them. And they put them through their equipment with the rest of the polling place ballots. And the results for a precinct were the results from the precinct. They were ready all at that time. after the 2008 Coleman-Franken recount, when it became apparent from testimony that things weren't necessarily being done the same from county to county, the legislator made the decision to have the absentee ballots processed at the county level instead of going to the polling places. And now we've got the ballot board that was created, and all of the rules and regulations with that. I can tell you that one of the other things that we struggle with is that, to be totally honest, the legislators are not always as clear as they think they are when they're making the statutory changes. And so part of our struggle is sometimes there are areas of statute where it's referenced one place that maybe contradicts what's said in another part of statute. I think that's gotten a lot cleaner. I think a lot of that, I've seen a lot of that clean up in the legislature. But, and the other thing I would say too, when we talk about the guidance from the statute, my staff knows that if we get a question about how we're doing things, procedures, protocols, what should we do, what shouldn't we do, I never go and sleep at night reading the guide or the election administrator guide. My mantra is you go back to the source, you go back to the statute. It's all well and good what the guidance document says, but what does the statute say? What does the rule say? And that's what we're always doing our absolute utmost effort into making sure that how we do it here is following the actual statutory language and the rule language, not what's in a guidance document, and getting our county attorney consultation on that because they are the legal guidance for us. And so working with them to make sure we're being compliant with the actual statute and rules as we possibly can.
Mr. Chair, a couple more comments. Thank you, Kendra. That's helpful because I think sometimes we forget. We look at you're the face of the elections and you are locally. But I also don't think that the number of people in the room reflects the importance of the issue. I think we had 7 people speak today. And I appreciate Commissioner Workman's generosity of expanding past 5 minutes for people to come up and speak and multiple times in some cases. I took the comment that Mr. Hake made kind of personal, right? Because there's 2 pieces. There's a couple of people up on this board that endured the election, right? We were on the ballot, so you have to tread cautiously when you're on the ballot. Where do you weigh in? Where don't you weigh in? All those other things. But I got a text, I think it was 2:30 in the morning, found out that the vote total was in my favor and in Commissioner Anderson's favor. And then I think it was half an hour later, it's like, oh, hold on just a minute. We didn't do anything wrong, but the state's reflecting it at 100%. And it's not 100%. I think there was 4,200 ballots that weren't missing. They just hadn't been fed through. And about the same time, I was getting a text from a peer of ours in a neighboring county. And the vote total came through for an individual that was shown as the winner. And 4,200 ballots later was not the winner. And so it's personal because this is, when you're waiting for those results, when you're in elected capacity, it's a rare place to look. The other piece that it's personal is every single person on this board, most people in the room, but every person on this board is elected. We're out in our communities. The pork chop dinner, the fish fry, the pancake breakfast, the ball games, the ribbon cuttings, all that stuff. So we're listening to all the things that matter to people in our county. And I'll say, by and large, people were happy with the flow of how they could vote and more convenient. They were happy with the results. They were happy with your responses and your answers. And I will say that for the collective nature of the people that we represent, 23,000 people per district, the thing that's on people's mind most right now is not the election. It will be in 26 for sure, but it's how can I stay living in my house? How can I afford for my kids to live in this area? Thinking about the safety in the sheriff's office. And so I like these conversations. This is one of many that we have, and I just wanted to use the opportunity to say, elections is a small fraction every 2 or 3 or 4 years of what we do, and we take it serious or we wouldn't have forums like this. So just wanted to make those comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Fahey.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just was ruled yesterday by the Minnesota Court of Appeals, and it was in the paper this morning, that the witness requirement for Minnesota voters to vote by absentee ballot does not violate the voting rights. And it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. I know one of the gentlemen talked about the voting witness requirement, and now they're just mentioned, is it going to go to the Supreme Court next? So that just, as all these changes, and I think that's the challenge for all of us, is the changes that take place and then the interpretation of the various statutes. I think, Al, you had mentioned, or David mentioned the word shall. repeatedly in the word may and how that comes into the interpretation. And so I really enjoyed the work session today. We continue to learn so much, but ultimately, and you had mentioned it earlier, Kendra, about it's a Carver County success. It's not your office being successful, but I personally think it is your office being successful in what you do, and so thank you.
I'd like to respectfully reply to Commissioner Uterman's comments. Steve Simon's website of reviser of statutes is not Minnesota statute. In fact, it subverts Minnesota statute, and with it, I believe that in every move he's made there, he has prioritized convenience over election integrity. And in my opinion, that is wrong.
Jennifer Ray, two clarifying comments. One, as far as elections go, I did chat GPT yesterday on commissioners and what are they responsible for with elections. I don't know if this is accurate because it's coming from AI, but it did say that you guys choose the polling places, which kind of surprised me. So I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I will just say this, that I did notice that when we have precincts that are together, it can be a nightmare at the end of the night. I don't know how they get all goofed up, but I know that they can get goofed up. And there was, I think in Chaska, were they there till like 4 a.m? You know, and I think if we had separate locations, that probably wouldn't have been a problem. Just one suggestion. And number two, just wanted to clarify. I picked this report up even though I made it almost 2.5 years ago this morning from the police officers because I pretty much assumed what it would state and that it was everything is perfect, just like today's election report. Thank you.
If we picked the polling places, there may be one in size. So we'll have to review, maybe Mose and Chanhassen.
Then maybe we get 100%.
Something. I think I knew
I
that
tell you
too.
what, you're a killjoy, Kendra. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I know. Sorry, we're getting giggly now, so.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Just a question here for the auditor. Is it and I guess I should ask you, I'm wondering if it's his opinion then that Carver County offices acting as a polling place is exempt from party balance rules in all the precincts? Could you answer?
Let me answer with an example. That'll help. So this year, we had people that were poll challengers, which are allowed at the precinct, and they came to our absentee ballot, pre-absentee, voting absentee, and they wanted to challenge the voters like you can on election day. And it was very clear that it came down that the statutes don't allow poll challengers to come on during the absentee ballot board because they don't have to have election judges there. You have to have them there to do those specific tasks, the ballot duplication, signature verification. But because the poll challengers are not required, they're not allowed to come on during the absentee ballot period, they weren't allowed. And the attorneys got involved, and they were going different places, and it was a very good example of how the election day precincts don't always apply to the absentee ballot board process because they're two very different statutes.
Mr. Meisner.
But my question is specific to party balanced election judges that are handling absentee ballots. Are you under the impression that the county is not obligated to have party balanced judges at the county office to handle absentee ballots like they are for regular ballots at precincts? That's my question.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and board members, the statutes allow us to have deputy county auditors, as I presented, or party balanced election judges. Either one of them are there. And it does say the statute that
Can you cite the statute?
the statute that Patricia Williamson put up here says, sufficient number of election judges, party ballot election judges, and we view that as that the tasks that have to be done by election judges, that's what they're talking about. We have to have enough election judges to be able to do ballot duplication and signature verification. So that's, that's what the statute says. That's how we read it.
So I suppose you can let the record know that he doesn't believe that 204B.21 applies to the county offices where they have to exhaust the list provided by the state parties. I mean, by the GOP or the DFL. That, because it says clearly in there, they cannot have more than half of their election judges from one party, and they have to exhaust that list prior to appointing any other election judges. Apparently now I don't know how that is because they handle absentee ballots, but if that only applies to precincts and precincts don't handle absentee ballots anymore, then the law is especially effectively just not being followed. It doesn't apply to anybody. So I think this is a big problem that we have in our statutes because there's no clarification and there's nothing that's tying any kind of responsibility to the office, the county offices, like they would to the precincts and so forth. So I think it's sort of a matter of people just kind of playing, plausible deniability or something like that, we don't have to follow these laws. And so the laws really do need to be clarified at the legislature, but we should all take note of that this is what I believe the county believes.
I just want to clarify that, that it was specifically stated, as I mentioned, that the 2024 Supreme Court ruling with Hennepin County, they clearly laid out what we're talking about. So you can refer to that, and it'll answer your question based on what the Supreme Court ruling states. So it's not me.
The
Yeah.
case?
I'll give it to you. I mean,
Okay.
it was the one that was pretty well known.
I think it's something that needs to be tightened up. We have a big
But
problem.
I totally agree with the way the statutes are written. They're not very clear. I think the Supreme Court ruling is very clear. So it clarified that
If
particular
I can
issue.
get a copy of that from you, or at least the name of that would be great. I think if we do not rectify this, we have a serious problem in Minnesota. And people are going to continue to think there's major misconduct going on in our elections, which there could be. So,
Can I ask a clarifying question? And again, I was on the ballot, but I wasn't up here this last time. But I thought this commission, this board, committed to equal number of judges from each party, correct? I mean, that's what I heard sitting in the audience.
Commissioner Anderson and Mr. Chair and board members and the public. So just for a couple of things, this is one of those, don't know if you're happy about it or not, but 203B.121 is the statute that talks about the absentee ballot boards and the composition and goes into speaking to that it can be either deputized county auditors or election judges. So that's 203B.121. And as far as the election judges on the ballot board, they were all from the party lists. We had no election judge hat people, as I call them. So we say somebody's either wearing a deputized county auditor hat on our ballot board or they're wearing an election judge hat. The people that were on the ballot board for Carver County were from the party list. We had 3 of one party, 2 of another. There will be more in future elections, just talking about the volumes and some of the things that we can do going forward. And the statute says that at any given time, no more than half of the election judges can be from one party unless you have an odd number, and then you can have one more. So that's why we're okay with having 3 of one party and 2 of the other.
correct.
Yep. So, but just to clarify, we did not have any election judges on our ballot board that were not from the party list.
So can I ask one more
Mr.
question? please?
Meisner and Ms. Ray, I'm going to give you each one more comment, so
This will
the
be my
Carver
last-
County Board
My
can,
last question. Maybe we can meet
go
on
get
this
some
later.
nutrition, maybe healthcare, but so this is going to string on for a long time, and I think we've got a few things to try and straighten out behind the scenes, and Mr. Frischman, maybe he'll announce his retirement tomorrow.
I
We
hope
don't
not.
need that.
But I hope not too. But
I'll limit it to the one dual part question. No. So you're basically saying that in the county, at the county office, you only had 5 election judges for the whole, on the ballot board, for the whole 46 days or whatever. Is that correct?
Because of the statutory duties that they're required to be the ones to do.
How are are there any election judges then, I guess, present at all the precincts? And how are they selected? Because isn't it your responsibility to select them all, or? So they select their own at the precinct level from the major party list? Is that to your understanding? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meiser.
Yep, thanks.
My pen, one of my favorites, I'm glad I saw it up here. I just wanted to clarify that Mr. Frischman is not our auditor. I know that I looked at you, and I'm sorry if that confused anyone here. He's not our auditor because other people have said that to me in the past, that he's our auditor, and I'm like, he's not our auditor. Our auditor never shows up. He's the buffer between the auditor because we don't elect our auditor in. He's Director of Finance. I'll let you say it.
I can answer that one. Dave Frischman, Property and Finance Director. I oversee the county auditor who handles our property taxes. I oversee Kendra, who's our elections administrator, and does our licensing. I oversee the county assessor, the county recorder, and
Dave, you're being
and the deputy
modest. You're the
register.
ditch
So
administrator,
and they're
too.
all, and I'm also a ditch administrator. They're all statutory positions. So the county auditor, county treasurer, who's Mary Kay, elections administrator, deputy registrar, and the county recorder, all statutory positions. Some used to be elected, as we talked about, they're not anymore. But yeah, so you're correct, I'm not the county auditor. Kendra's the, Crystal's the county auditor.
And then my comment.
Yes.
And then my comment is, it is actually very clear in the law, and I'm surprised you guys don't know the law and that you don't read the law, because it's super simple, and it's been repeated dozens, well, let's be more accurate, 12 times in front of you all. They must exhaust the major party list. Where it leaves a little wiggle room is if nobody signs up to be an election judge and the major party lists. Then it gives the ability to use county employees and make them deputized auditors. In that case, no, deputized auditors, actually. So in that case, that like nobody signs up, everyone says, I'm not going to be a judge, and they have to use that, there are two areas that they cannot use the deputized auditors, that they have to use election judges. That I talked about on voting day, November 5th, that I brought up was, number one, verifying signatures, which we threw out the baby with the bathwater in 2024. We used to have to do that in 2022. And number two is duplicating ballots. And those have to be election judges. You can't use deputized auditors. So what Simon has done with his revisor statutes, instead of the actual law, is say, all you have to do is use election judges for those two items. The rest, fill them with employees. And that's where the confusion is coming in. Hopefully that clarified a few things.
Ms. Ray, thank you. I would say that this county board is not nearly as ignorant as you might think. So none of that information was brand new, except maybe the last little piece she gave about the election judge. And we'll talk to Kendra about that maybe some other time. Somewhere between nothing to see here and having a wary eye on this very important process of voting is where all of us fall. And I probably lean more towards the wary eye because I've watched the legislature. And I think the board should not question the individual legislators because they're all brilliant people, even if they were formerly in the legislature. I probably do more to kick some of those people, but it's politics. But anyway, I don't get the feeling this is maybe done. We have some loose ends that we're going to track down, police reports and other, and to make sure that our Carver County elections are by golly fair and honest. And so I appreciate everybody's input. It was great to see the mayor of Chanhassen here and the city administrator and all the great citizens. So I'm going to call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.